Welcome everyone. So you can see homes in one here, the board, Scott. We'll be doing a hearing. Let's start with us at the bar. So I'm going to call the hearing board to order and just remind members of the board that this is a tribunal that we are bound by procedure that we must follow. And we are going to be strictly adhering to that procedure in order that a fair hearing be granted to the applicants. I'm going to ask our recording secretary to call the roll.
Shelley Ann Bentley is not here. Dave Barris.
Present.
Doug Bretton.
Here.
Robert Chambers.
Here.
Michael Columbus. Here. Thomas Shelley.
Here.
Jim Palmer.
Here.
Stuart Patterson.
Present.
Chris Van Passen.
Here.
Randy Weisler. Here. Peter Eatman.
Here.
This hearing is being recorded and will be posted at our YouTube channel at a later date. I can't see the is there anyone attending virtually? Okay, so I don't have to worry about that. Once the hearing has begun, anyone that Shelley Ann does come, she will not be allowed to participate because she must be present for the whole hearing in order to take part in the hearing. There is a provision for the declaration of pecuniary interest. Does anyone wish to declare at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on. The chair's opening remarks. I'm supposed to read this. I'm going to ask Dana to read this because my reading glasses are kind of on.
Do you know right? Or plug it right then back.
Do we need it?
Okay, well, you speak of it.
We're now going to conduct a hearing under Section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act in respect of an application by Ken and Susan Newhawk. Is that correct? Newhawk. For permission to construct structure at Charlottesville, Plan 128, Lot 28, 18 Ordnance Avenue in Turkey Point, Norfolk County. The authority administers Ontario Regulation 4124 under Section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act, which requires permission of the authority for development within an area regulated by the authority in order to ensure no adverse effect on the control of flooding, erosion, dynamic beaches, or unstable soil or bedrock, or to permit alteration to watercourse or interference with the wetland. The staff has reviewed this proposed work, and a copy of the staff report has been given to the applicant and the board. The applicant was invited to file material in response to the staff report, a copy of which was also been provided to the board. The Conservation Authorities Act provides that an authority shall not refuse an application for a permit or attach conditions to a permit unless the applicant for the permit has been given an opportunity to be heard by the authority. In holding this hearing, the authority board is to determine whether or not a permit is to be issued with or without conditions. In doing so, we can only consider the application in the form that is before us, the staff report, such as evidence as may be given, and the submissions to be made on behalf of the applicant. Only information disclosed prior to the hearing is to be presented at the hearing. The proceedings will be conducted according to the statutory powers of Procedure Act. Under Section 5 of the Canada Evidence Act, a witness may refuse to answer any question on the ground that the answer may tend to criminate the person or may tend to establish his or her liability to a civil proceeding at the instance of the Crown or of any person. Procedure in general shall be informal without the evidence before it being given under oath or affirmation. As the hearing proceeds, the procedures listed in the hearing procedure summary provided may be relaxed or abbreviated for efficiency. The authority may ask questions of witnesses for clarification at any time. If the applicant has any questions to ask of the hearing board or of the authority representative, they must be directed to the chair of the board.
Thank you, Dana. And just one other note. I did have the opportunity to outline the procedure to the applicants prior to the meeting. That's why you saw me in there with the applicants, I was explaining the procedure. So, the next step is, the staff presentation. And I'm gonna ask Leanne to make a presentation, and before doing that, if you could introduce the applicants to the hearing. Just preparing to make remarks, I would ask the hearing board members to just hold the questions at the end of the presentation.
And can everyone hear okay? Great, good evening. So here we have tonight, Susan Newhall is with us, and then also the agent Sam Leffinger, co-host. They are, so Ken and Susan Newhall have applied to LPRCA under regulation 4124 for the addition to the boathouse and 209 Burdens Ave in Turkey. Then the entire presentation has been included in your agenda package as well. So the below that you'll see up here on the screen. You can the application has been deemed complete for the addition to an existing one-story boathouse. Staff are unable to recommend approval of this application. The subject lands are known municipally as 209 Ordnance Avenue in Turkey Point. The approximate boundary is outlined in yellow in the image on the right that have a close-up view. And then on the key map to the left is a green circle outlining the area in Turkey Point of where the property is located. The subject lands contain an existing cottage and a one-story boathouse. The cottage is on the east or the right-hand side of the photo, and the garage boathouse is located on the west side, or on the left side of the photo. At this location, at 209 Ordnance Avenue, the property is subject to flooding and erosion hazards from Lake Erie, and the entire property is regulated under Ontario Regulation 4124. The limit of the regulated area is shown in red, and the red hatched area is the area that is regulated under Reg 4124, just showing that we have jurisdiction over this area. Specifically for this application is the shoreline flooding hazard applies. So Lake Erie, the flood hazard associated with Lake Erie covers the entire property and the majority of Turkey Point, and which is regulated under Reg 4124. The simple site plan that has been submitted to LPRCA, outlined in green, just to kind of accentuate for visual, is the existing footprint of the single-story boathouse. Outlined in yellow is the proposed addition to the footprint. To give you an idea of the structural components of the size, here is a breakdown of the level of which the areas will be located on. So the boat well is on the ground level. There's a size for that. There's a wood deck surrounding the boat well, and also a proposed garage. The second floor includes an internal space and also a channel facing deck. So here's a breakdown of what has, if to be approved, this is what we're applying for. The proposed structure is, here's the images that were provided to us, just to give you a visual of what they are applying for. The east side, it breaks it down east side, south side, west side. So as you can see here, the addition of the garage with the garage door and the second story space, which includes the deck as well. This is on page 32 of your agenda package, if you just want to take a closer look. The proposed structure, the first floor is on page 30 of your agenda package. Again, just showing the boat well, the deck around it, proposed garage, and then the internal stairs leading up to the second floor. Here is the floor plan of the second story. Proposed layout is the internal space with the internal stairs and the proposed covered deck that faces out to the channel. So when an application is received by LPRCA, staff review it against the applicable policy. The overall intent of our policies is to prevent loss of life, minimize property damage and social disruption, reduce public and private expenditure for emergency operations, evacuation, restoration, and protection measures. Minimize the hazardous or unnecessarily development of flood and erosion susceptible shoreline areas, which in future years may require extensive protection measures. So the next few slides is the policy consideration. So this is taken from the approved policy document approved by the board of directors. So for this first policy section, the size and design of the structure creates an opportunity for habitable space. Any additional units reflecting a Lake Erie are a concept that staff cannot allow, as there is no safe access to and from the site. Safe access means locations where 100-year flood does not exceed 0.8 meters along access routes. The route to enter or exit Turkey Point is 2.5 kilometers from the site, and the depths of flooding exceed 1 meter in various locations. Therefore, residents have no safe way to exit during a storm event, and emergency services would have a very difficult time entering and exit during a flood event as well. Staff acknowledged that by nature, boat houses are typically close to the shorelines and that are utilized for the purposes of storing and or docking boats and related equipment. The proximity to the shoreline puts boathouses at an inherent risk of natural hazards, and therefore it's important to ensure the use and scope of the structure is limited to minimize potential risk to life and property. The next policy considerations. So as you can see here, I've done kind of a check mark or tax liabilities policies and that as it relates to the entire property is within an area of risk. It's all within the flood hazard. It's just the nature of the location. For B, floodproofing standards, protection work standards, and safe access as determined by us are met. The structure is required to be wet flood proofed and the use of flood resistant material to be used. In staff's opinion, the proposed materials to be used below the design flood elevation are not flood damage resistant. Proposed materials include regular lumber and plywood that when wet would need to be replaced and thus result in stages. Next policy considerations. So there's no boathouse or no basement or crawl space that is proposed. So yes, that meets our policy. The next section is there's no risk of structural failure due to potential hydrostatic dynamic forces. Hydrostatic pressures have been designed for. However, the potential hydrodynamic forces have not been defined, and the structure has not been designed to address these forces without structural damage. A solution to this would be to have an engineer report define and address these forces. Following policy considerations are, again, that there's no feasible alternative outside the shoreline flooding hazard, as I've stated before. The entire location is within the flood hazard. The site is subject to frequent flooding. There's no feasible alternative outside this flood hazard, so we're satisfied that this policy consideration is met. LPRCA policies place an upward limit on accessory buildings to 100 square meters, or just over 180 square feet. Staff have recommended permits for structures that have been slightly larger than 100 square meters. However, staff feel that the policy should be more closely followed to try and discourage the transition of these areas into habitable space. For D, given the proposed size and design of the second story, there is a concern that additional uses could be included. In staff's opinion, the size and design is not consistent with space that would be utilized for storage. With an increased size of the second story, the overall risk to natural hazards has increased from existing and greater than what LPRCA staff deem appropriate for the site, which we can support. So in summary, staff cannot consider the structure to be minor in nature. The size and design create an opportunity for the second story to be converted into habitable space, which is not allowed in the Lake Erie floodplain. The site does not have safe access during times of flooding. The depth of flooding on the access route is unsafe, potentially putting both residents and emergency responders' lives at risk. The overall guidance and intent of our policies is to minimize potential risk to life and property during natural hazards events. So as such, we are recommending refusal, and the reasons for refusal are in the staff report and also here as well. And that is the end of my presentation.
Before you shut down, hearing members, do you have any questions of clarification to the staff, keeping in mind that we're not debating the issue at this point, we're not covering an opinion at this point, but it's important to understand what the staff has presented. So do you have any questions to clarify anything that you may not understand?
What sort of engineering study would be necessary to apply the forces that are undetermined?
That is so they would look at the depths of flooding and the movement of the waves, if there's waves that can occur in that area. What exactly they look at, there's technical staff in the front. I can't tell you the technical components, but basically usually they do a model or whatnot, or they look at the depths of flooding and how close it is to the shoreline, and they can design appropriately for those sources.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thomas?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. How often do we go back to either yourself or the LPRCA or the municipality to check on whether there's habitable space being utilized?
Can you repeat the first part of your question?
How often do we go back to inspect whether the space that you're questioning is possibly habitable, either by the municipality or the LPRCA?
So LPRCA, unless we get a complaint, there's not really any follow-up that comes with it. For the building department, I'm not sure how often they go.
Okay, so it's just complaint basis. Cool, thanks.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, what is that geodetic elevation for your flood? What is that elevation? 17.
So the design flood elevation is 176.8.
So you remember, like 176.8. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, Stewart, sorry, Stewart. Next one.
Yeah, just to follow up to Mike's question, just regarding this habitable space, depending what happens when we hear from the folks who are appealing this and the outcome, let's say it's a positive outcome. And I know, man, you just said that you guys typically don't get involved unless there's a complaint. But could we not do something as far as, because there seems to be a conflict, one side is saying there's potential for habitable space, the other side is saying this is for dry storage. So could we not do a recommendation that if this happened to be passed, and it's just a big if it happened to be, that there'll be a joint inspection done between Long Point and the building department from Norfolk or bylaw? That way all the boxes are checked. You look as puzzled as I did asking the question, sorry.
So I know that the building department has the authority to enter lands. Us as regulation officers, so on the enforcement side, it specifically says that we are not allowed to enter buildings, but there might be a kind of a caveat there that if a building official requests our presence there, just that might be something that's possible, but I'm not sure.
And on this, are there any final questions from the board members? Then I can thank Leanne for the presentation. This is the applicant's opportunity to come forward. If you come forward, if you begin your presentation, if you have any questions of staff, you can begin by asking them and then go on to your presentation. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the honorable council members. My name is Sam Bunting. I am the owner of Prominent Homes and the applicant and agent for my clients, Ken and Sue Newhoff. Ken regrettably cannot make it tonight, but Sue is attending and she might be here for any questions or backup if I might need. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight and share our perspective on our application. I'd just like to talk about 4 main points for our application and why we feel that it would be justified to be built and approved today. First of all, the first main point is that we intend the upstairs use to be for storage space. We don't intend for it to be habitable space. I feel as a builder and a designer of cottages in Turkey Point, storage is one of those vital pieces of the puzzle that tends to get overlooked. And oftentimes clients tend to maximize the amount of usable space of their cottages and realize shortly after they live in them that they have no storage for anything like exterior furniture or maybe some water toys. So I know Ken and Sue have expressed that the furniture and outdoor water equipment would go upstairs in the building. The second main point that we have to address is the concern for safety. I guess concern not only for the inhabitants living at the cottage, but also for maybe rescue members, ambulance people, if they're called in during a major flood event. My understanding is that there are safety procedures in place for areas like Long Point and Turkey Point that actually send out 24-hour notices prior to significant storm events so that habitants of these areas can leave before the significant storms occur, which would obviously greatly reduce any injury or need for emergency vehicles. And the other, reason being the storage, we're not having any more habitants live in the building. There was a very good presentation around what the intentions of our building is for. So we do have an existing building, an existing boathouse, and we intend to build a small garage behind it for a vehicle to be parked in and lifted up on blocks. And then obviously the second story boathouse would match the theme of the neighborhood. So we've provided a lot of photos of surrounding neighborhoods. So I'm sure if you look at your package, there's close to 20 different photos of 2-story cottages that were built and are existing in Turkey Point. It's very evident that, there already is a precedence for 2-story cottages, and my clients really want to match the neighborhood, what's already existing. They don't want to essentially intensify the neighborhood by building more outbuildings. Norfolk County bylaw actually allows a boathouse and a separate 100 square meter building. That would be 2 buildings of 133 square meters that would be allowed. My client essentially is asking for only roughly 67 square meters of footprint. It's quite small in nature. They feel that they want to at least leave a significant amount of property untouched by buildings, which would also actually reduce the amount of impact from flooding damages as well by having less of a footprint and less lot coverage. It's to be noted that we are working with a local engineer, Gerard Engineering. We do have engineering for the structure of our building. So the existing structure is sitting on helical piles that are drilled down into the ground, and the proposed addition is also engineered to be sitting on helical piles as well. We are proposing that the addition, we're going to be building a slab for the garage for the car to drive on, and for some type of lift to be placed on the slab. All that it will be engineered. All that will be, engineered for some type of hydrological uplift. You know, we know that when there's flooding that comes into the property, and the existing building has been there for over 20 years. So the last 2 years ago, we experienced a significant flood where water was over the roads up to the doorways of many houses. It was within the existing building. We understand that when we're building these existing boathouses, that a flood is going to happen and it's going to soak a lot of building materials. We understand that we have to use proper building materials that will get wet and that will eventually allow the water to leave the building and dry and maintain its structural integrity. That's obviously first and foremost a very important aspect of building a boathouse. So we do understand that. So I know recently, just last year, there was a 2-story boathouse that was approved roughly in May for 125 ordinance, and it was close to 2.5 times the size of our footprint, significantly larger. My clients really aren't asking for a lot here, and we respectfully ask that you consider our application for approval. And I'm here for any questions if you have some.
The hearing members, do you have any questions or clarification for the applicant at this time? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So the proposed structure is that to be built on and around the existing boathouse, or is the existing boathouse to be demolished and then all new construction?
So the existing boathouse walls will stay. We intend to put a second story on the existing boathouse wall. And it's all been engineered and approved. And then we intend to take off the siding of the existing boathouse and install new siding to suit the entire building. And then we intend to add on to the back side of the existing buildings.
Follow up, Mr. Chair. So what are those walls constructed of?
I believe they are constructed out of some 2x4 and 2x6 studs.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Chairman Massey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last September, were you the agent at the time when you went before the Norfolk County Committee of Adjustment and we gave the minor variance on
Yes.
height and on the thing?
Yes.
And the recommendation from LPRCA at the time was, can advise that proposed application is consistent with section 3.11, 3.12 of the PCS, provided the second story of the garage remains inhabitable and the structure is what is. Now, with your engineered drawings, have that engineered drawings, I assume, has solved the wetlands problem.
The engineer drawings at this point have only addressed the structure of the helical piles, but the building blueprints will address the proper use of pressure treated wood material that is allowed to wet.
Which generally comes with the building permit state.
Yes, it does.
And you can't get the building permit until you get the permit from the conservation authority.
That's accurate. And maybe to address this, I know there was questions by the board earlier about, when Norfolk County would expect. So typically at the end of construction, Norfolk County does a final inspection of the building. It's completed, and at that time, it's inspected for the full building to see whether it matches the original building application.
And they also will look at the draft plans because they don't want to see any plumbing into the second floor or the ground floor. They want very minimal hydro service, lights up there and a couple of receptacles. That's one way to deal with making sure that it's inhabitable. Right?
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Keep in mind, questions of clarification at this point. I'm going to ask our staff member if they have any questions to the applicant.
No, I don't have any.
Do you have any questions for staff?
I don't. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Then I believe that concludes both the presentation of staff, presentations of the applicant. So I can excuse you. And, We are now at the point where we must deliberate on the issue. Usually we move in the camera to the deliberations. I have a motion to move the camera. Lead by Member Palmer, second by Member Hippa. All those in favor? That is carried. Ask anyone that is not part of the process to leave, and we will call you back when the deliberation is completed. The last duty of our hearing board is to advise the applicants of the decision of the hearing board on their application. And I can advise the applicants that the application has been approved by the board. And would ask that you contact staff in the morning to receive the particulars on how you will be formally advised of the approval of your application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that being said, and that being done, I can adjourn the
You just want to say the conditions that.
can adjourn the hearing. And I can do that by declaration for the hearing adjourned. You will hear or you can receive the full explanation of the approval if you contact staff in the morning, which you should do.
Thank you.